Hello, Assalamu alaikum guys. It's Dr. Amreen Seher, Assistant Professor from Civil Engineering Department. So I'm your teacher for the design of structure steel part, and today we are going to be start with a very brief introduction. So your course is going to be taught by two teachers. Two sections will be taught by Professor Dr. Rashid Hamid and two by Dr. Amreen. So we are going to be start with this. Before starting our recordings for this lecture, I would like to inform you about your evaluation process. Your evaluation process for the theory part comprises of the quiz 1, that is going to be hold the 10% out of whole evaluation assessment, and quiz 2 again 10% out of 100, and class participation 10%. That CP maybe includes the assignments, any other quiz, or your attendance is like this. So here it is written if certain presentations be held or any other discussions in attendance. Mid-semester exams will be of 30% and final term exams will be of 40%. For the reference books, the very first and the basic AISE specifications, that should be with you all the time, so that if anything is not clear to you by any of the reference book, you can directly go towards the specification. The words of the specifications will be the final. Okay, so these are not going to be changed. So maybe something other written in the books, in the literature, but the specifications are the final words that you have to be followed. So other than that, unified design of steel structures by Geschwinder, LF Geschwinder, steel structures by McCormick, steel structures by Solomon and Johnson, design of steel structures by Gaylord and Gaylord, steel structures by Dr. Zahid Ahmed Siddiqui, LRFT steel design 8, that is already with you, 4th edition by Dr. Zahid Ahmed Siddiqui. So you have to bring all of these in theory and design classes. Steel structures by John E. Lothers. In mid-semester, we are going to deal with the design of industrial buildings. In end semester, the design of the steel truss bridges. So before starting the industrial buildings, its components needed to be understood. We have to, first of all, if we start from the substructure of any industrial building, steel industrial building, going to be having the first substructure starting the foundation. That foundation is maybe of concrete. The concrete pads are used, okay, or the concrete pedestals are used, okay. So these are purely of RCC, or you can use for the anchorage. Okay, for the anchor bolts you can use the certain pockets inside, okay, and then we can just insert the grout that will be other than the RCC. So that grouting is used for the anchor bolts, okay, sometimes if it is needed, if the tensile forces resisted by the anchor bolts are much more higher, then the concrete itself should be having a certain resistive, or you can say the certain anchorage properties more than this tensile stresses. So that is going to be if not incorporated by RCC, then we are going to be use the grouts, cement grouts. Then connections between the steel column and the concrete foundation. So this foundation is going to be further, this is the concrete foundation. Foundation is going to be strengthened by using a steel plate that is called as base plate. So base plate and anchor bolts are used to connect your foundations, concrete foundations, with the rest of the superstructure of the industrial building. Then you have the steel columns. Steel columns are the beam columns. Beam columns are further is going to be attached or connected with the base plate. It may be welded or it may be connected with bolt, and then it may going to be start with the superstructure of the steel frames. And you have the steel beams. Okay, so here if you see in this figure, this is a typical steel building. So this steel building, in the superstructure you can see that the columns are there. So here the beam columns. So for the one frame, here you can see a gable frame. This gable frame is going to be having certain inclined beam. Okay, so this is one beam, this is the second beam, and here you can see the connection. So this connection may be like this. Okay, so here you can see the bolted connection. So here you have the columns. These columns are generally called as the beam columns because those needed to be carry the movements, the heavy movements, and these movements are going to be transferred from the beam itself, and these beams are going to be put above the beam column. So here you can see these beams. So this is one frame, you can see. This frame is, and there is replicated by another frame behind that in the lateral direction, and then you can see the another frame in the lateral direction. So these frames are in the lateral direction, can be as many as of depending upon the type of the building. And then further, these beams above are going to be reinforced with the help of the longitudinal beams. These are going to be called as purlins. So these beams are generally called as girders, main beams of the frame. Okay, so these are the girders. So it may be straight like a portal frame. If the portal frame is there, then this beam may be a straight one. So it is going to be called as the simple girder or the main beam of the frame. So you have the steel beams, you have the beam column connection. So as I have told you in this figure, the column beam joints. So here the riveted, it may be welded, it may be riveted. Here these are bolted. Roofing system, all of the roofing system is going to be includes the purlins and all of the bracings over here. The roof is also going to can be braced by the providing the bracing in the lateral direction, in longitudinal direction, in cross. Okay, so any one type of the roofing system may be there. You may have the purlins. Purlins are of course, as I have told you, the longitudinal beams. Those are going to be provide a reinforcing system or a stabilizing system for the beam itself. Then you have the crane girders. So if the crane is needed to be supported, then crane girders are going to be having the brackets. So if this is the main column, so out of the column, certain type of the part is going to be used as a bracket. Okay, so that bracket is going to be run throughout in that particular direction. So this is going to give you a beam. So if the bracket is over there, this is going to be carry the load, and this is going to be called as crane girder. If any girder or any beam that is going to be hold the load of the crane itself within the industrial building, then we are going to be say it as crane girder. You have the steel brackets. That's I have told you that brackets are needed to be designed separately. These may be the components. So we are going to be doing our projects only these components till the bracing system, one by one. So starting with the design of a beam column. Beam columns are the structural members that are subjected to a combination of bending and the axial stresses. So that's what you have to be keep in your mind. So if a simple column is there, then we are familiar with this fact, and we are known with this fact that this column is always going to be experience the axial load only. And due to this axial load, the application of the axial load that is in compression usually, compressive is in nature, your column is going to be show you with the buckling effect, and this buckling effect is going to give you a certain deflections from the center of the column. This may be the smaller delta. So these deflections are needed to be incorporated with respect to this P load, P delta. So these movement effect or the bending effect that is going to be incorporated, that is due to the effect of the axial load. Okay, but if the other sources of the bending movements be there, then we are going to be suppose our column are going to be design our column, not only the columns but the beam columns. Okay, so particularly the combination of the bending stresses and the axial stresses be there, the prominent bending stresses. The structural behavior resembles simultaneously to that of a beam and a column. Okay, so majority of the steel building frames have columns that carry sizable bending moments in addition to the usual compressive loads. So if we talk about the bending moments experienced by the beam column, then there must be a certain sources. Those are going to be cause the bending moments. These sources will be maybe due to the erection problem, mean it is almost impossible to erect the columns perfectly vertical. So if it is not going to be erect but perfectly vertical, then we can say that the center load exactly not coming on the columns, mean the loads are not going to be coming on the center of the column. So for that the perfectly vertical erection is needed. So due to the fabrication processes or during that, if it is not going to be provided in the field, then we can say it is a real column. So ideal column is those are going to give you the perfectly vertical erect column, mean its center line is perfectly vertical. Okay, but the practically for the real columns
we may not get that particular situation. So we are getting the extra bending moment due to this particular reason. Columns may be initially crooked or have other flaws with the result that lateral bending is produced. So your column may be initially crooked. So initial crookedness may be cause this particular effect. In the next slide, we will see the figures of all of these sources. Then it will be more clear to you. And if you have any other flaws, the local flaws. So your initial crookedness is like that. Your central column is very much vertical, but any other point, any local point, it may cause a certain deflection into it. So this is the particular case, then that may cause very smaller deflections, meaning increase in the deflections, and it may cause the reason to enhance the already present deflections, lateral deflections, and it may cause the bending moments. So with the result that lateral bending moment is produced. The other reason may be, in some cases, the crane beams parallel to the column line and other perpendicular beams rest on the brackets projecting out of the column. This produces the high value of the bending moment. It's a very common example you may have seen in the test pro lab of your own civil engineering department, that you can see the crane is running over there, and you can see that on the concrete columns the brackets are emerged and going to be constructed, and on those brackets the girder has been placed, that is steel girder. And on this steel girder, on the steel beam that is running along the length of longitudinal direction of the lab itself, the crane wheels are running over there. Okay, and those are responsible to cause, if we are going to draw a 3D dimension. So here you have a column and you have a beam. So if the brackets are going to be designed to be attached with the beams and at different places, and the crane wheel is running on that particular bracket. So from this bracket, the load has been transferred towards the beam, and this beam is responsible to transfer the higher values of the bending moments towards the column. And your column is going to be experience this higher value of the bending moments. So finally, you are going to be getting the larger values of the bending moments. So this is the very common source in steel frame industrial buildings, in which you are going to be having the higher bending moments values for the columns. So, and the source may be the lateral loads particularly applied. So these may be the wind and the other lateral loads act within the column height and produces the bending. So if you have one column and the wind load is acting laterally, so it may be fixed, it may be like this. So if the lateral load has been produced, so you can observe the lateral deflection into the column. So this is going to be caused as the delta, the larger value of the deflection in this particular direction. So this may cause due to the lateral loads. So that lateral load may be the wind loads or the seismic loads. The bending moments from the beam are transferred to the columns if the connections are rigid. Your bending moments from the beams are transferred. If your connections are rigid, mean the movement connections be there. If it is rigid connections you are providing, so what does it means? That all of the movement experienced by the beam needed to be safely transferred towards the column, and from the column it needed to be safely transferred towards the base plate. Okay, the foundation of the frame structure. But if this is the particular case, we are only talking about over here the sources of the movements within the column. So if we're only going to be talk about this part, then your bending moments due to this connection, the beam is also going to be transferring a whole of its bending moment or part of it into the column, and finally your column is responsible to carry the bending moments. So here the sources of the bending moments are explained in the form of figure. In figure A, out of plumbness. So here, as I have told you, if your column is not perfectly erect, okay, the center line is not perfectly vertical, so if the loads are applying within the column, so this E mean eccentricity has been produced, and this eccentricity is going to be cause the movement within the column. Initial crookedness, as I have told you, any local damage or any local deflection of the central line of the column you are going to be observed due to fabrication, due to any other reason, or due to the material deficiency. Then you are going to be having the axial loads in the column. So finally you are getting the local deformation, lateral deformation, and it is going to be caused the deflections within the column, and the bending moments are going to be produced. So then the particularly applied eccentric loads. So eccentric loads due to the brackets, it may be outside the boundary or periphery of the column, it may be inside of it, whatever the case is, that your load is not purely applied along the center line of the column. So if it is going to be produced any eccentricity, then you are getting the bending moments over here. Here this is an example, as I have told you, sources of the bending moment. So lateral loads and heavy point loads on the brackets. So you can see this is a steel column. Okay, so your steel column is going to be give you a connection over here with the bracket. Okay, so here is the bracket. On the bracket, in the lateral direction, in longitudinal direction, the beams are placed, the girders are placed. Okay, so these girders are going to be apply the load, point load on that particular brackets. Okay, and from the center line of the column, this load is going to be cause the moments on the top end of the beam that is needed to be transferred throughout that particular column. So here you may have the eccentricities. So P into E will be the moments, those are going to be experienced by this beam and making it in this column, and it making it as beam column. So next is that the member is to be categorized as the beam column. I mean the knowledge of the actual forces are very important over here. If you are observing any column within a steel frame building, so you are not going to be, you have to decide before the designing analysis that whether it will be a beam column or not. And for that particular case, you have to have a background of the knowledge of the actual forces acting or experienced by this beam column. Your beam column is a very common element in a building structure. So if it is going to be having a rigid connections, mean from the beams, the movements are transferred towards the column, and your column itself having a brackets or having a larger sources of the bending movements other than the buckling, other than the pure axial deflections, then you have to be careful in deciding about the column, that this column is not going to be designed as a simple column, it is needed to be designed as a beam column. So to designing your beam column, what is the difference between a simple column and the beam column is the bending movements, okay, extra bending movements, additional bending movements. So these additional bending movements are going to be categorized as, or we are going to be designate it as technically as second order effects. So wherever in literature you will see these sources that is going to be cause the additional bending movements in beam columns, those are going to be called as second order effects. So the single most complicating factor in the analysis and design of a beam column is what is known as second order effects. Second order effects are the changes in the member forces and the movements as the direct result of structural deformations. Because the common elastic methods of structural analysis assume that all the deformations are small, these methods are not able to account for the additional second order effects. The results of that type of the analysis are called as first order effects. If we talk about the structural analysis, that is based on the common elastic methods. So if the common elastic methods are going to be used for to calculating the deformations, for the deformations those are very small, okay, so those are going to be incorporating the first order effects, that is first order forces, the first order movements and the first order displacements. So all of the effects in terms of forces, in terms of movements, in terms of displacements are going to be called as first order effects. To account for the influence of the deformation, an additional analysis must be performed. These deformations are the larger deformations due to the larger values of the bending moments experienced or carried by the beam column. So you have to go for an additional analysis. The result of this additional analysis is referred to as the second order effects. So due to the result of this additional analysis, you will get the second order forces, second order movements and second order displacements. So generally, technically, the smaller delta is going to be express the first order deflections, and this delta larger delta is going to be designate with or going to be relate with the second order deflections. So later on, when we are go on after the theoretical background, we will go towards the calculations and formulas and equations to solve the beam column, to design a beam column. Then we will see that this delta and this delta, there is a very large, you can say a clear boundary difference between these two deflections. So these are going to be relate with the first order effects, and this is going to be relate with the second order effect. Now, what different approaches you are using to include the second order effects? An approach that is consistent with the normal design office practice and with how beam column have been handled for many years uses a first order elastic analysis. Based on that, you are starting with your analysis with the first order elastic analysis, but to approximate the second order conditions while doing this analysis. This approach applies the multipliers to the result of the first order analysis to obtain the second order effects. So separate second order effects is very complicated. So it doesn't mean that you can't do that. We have different approaches to do the second order effects separately. That is going to be give you the second order, third order, fourth order, fifth order, I mean any order depending upon the amount or the value, larger values of the bending moments, you can do that. Okay, those are going to be more complicate your analysis and your equations to solve over there, but it doesn't mean that you can't do the second order analysis separately. But just to make the manual calculations or any simple beam column calculations for a simple type of the frames, we can go for this particular approach. That approach is going to give you the first order elastic analysis at first, and then you are going to be using an multipliers. Okay, those are going to be multiplied with the results of the first order analysis, simple elastic analysis, and this is going to give you the approximated second order effects and conditions, mean deflections. So those can be further with hit and trial methods and with the certain other checks you can satisfy it whether these approximations are okay or not. So here we talk about the second order effects. So you have the two different deflection components that could occur in a beam column influence the movements in that beam column. That may be going to be described as the member effect and the structure effect. So in next slide we will discuss what is a member effect. First of all, we discuss that. You can see this figure number 1, in which the deflection along the length of the member that results from the movement gradient along the member is shown in this figure. So if you have this movement gradient, okay, so movement gradient mean the deflection curve. So here you have the movement gradient, mean starting from that to that, mean one end, top end to the bottom end. In this particular case, the member ends must remain in their original position relative to each other. Thus no sway is considered. The sway condition is not there. This is going to be called as the no sway condition. No sway. So the moment created by the load P, that load must be purely axial. Purely axial load is applied on a column, and that particular column is going to be cause a movement. That is the movement created by the load P, action at an eccentricity, mean acting on at an eccentricity, small delta. Okay, so that is going to be cause a yielding effect, and this yielding effect is cause a little deflection delta, smaller eccentricity from the deformed member that is superimposed on the movement gradient resulting from the applied end moments. The magnitude of this additional second order movement depends on the properties of the column itself. Thus it is called as the member effect. So if we are further going to be use the sources of the second order effects, then the second order effects are caused by the first of all due to the member effect, the column properties itself. It is irrespective of the load applied. Whatever the axial load has been applied, the column properties itself, its radius of gyration, its dimensions, its material itself, its own stiffness is responsible to cause this particular bending. Okay, and that bending is going to be cause this delta, and this P, if is going to be shifted over here at the midpoint or of the column, then this load multiplied by this delta is going to cause the movement, this M1 and M2. Okay, so this M1 and M2 on both ends may be due to the beam movement. If it is transferring mean from this, it will be M1, and due to this P delta, M1 plus P delta, it will be going to give you the M2. Okay, mean like this. So if this is M1 and M2 both ends movements, then this P delta at the center point of the column can be superimposed. This movement gradient will be like this, because your both ends are restricted to sway. The no sway conditions be there. If this is the particular case, then the whole of this P delta effect is due to the column properties itself. This is very important. So one source of the second order effect, one causes of the second order effect is the column properties itself. Okay, that is going to be called as yielding effect. This yielding effect is going to be caused due to the no sway condition, just due to the gravity loads, mean the vertical loads, that will be P. So no lateral loads has been applied. If lateral loads has been applied, or the proper with the eccentricity, the proper loads are applied. I mean, loads are not applying axial loads on the column exactly at the center, anywhere here, then the proper eccentricities be there. So external sources or the additional movements has been added into it. So those will not be going to be cause the second order effect due to member effect. Member effects of the second order effect, out of the second order effect, is due to the column properties itself. Now the second order effects, secondly, is caused due to the structural effect. Structural effects mean when the beam column is a part of a structure that is permitted to sway. That is the sway condition. Okay, the first one was the member effect was for the no sway condition. But if you have a sway condition for one particular column, mean it is allowed to sway due to the applied lateral forces or any other load that has been applied at a certain eccentricity. So then the displacements of the overall structure also influence the movement in the member. The overall movements of the member is going to be increased. For a beam column that is permitted to sway an amount of delta, that delta is not smaller delta, that is the capital delta, that is for the structural effect. As shown in the figure 2, the additional movement is given by P into delta, because the lateral displacement of a given member is a function of the properties of all the members in a given story, and this movement is called as the structure effect. So one movement you are getting due to the member effect, and one movement you are getting due to the structural effect. So combined movement effect will be going to give you the whole second order effect. So here you can see in the figure, here you have the top of the column that is permitted to sway, and you have the movements. So here you have P into delta. The final movement at the bottom, it will be M1 plus P into delta, and you are getting this. So in member effect, you are getting the effect of P small delta due to the superimposing of the movement gradient on that. But here you are getting the same movement throughout this. For the sway condition, we are assuming the uniform distribution of the movement from top end to the bottom end. Okay, the M1, the same value is going to be transferred towards the towards the end of the column. Top to bottom, the movement is going to be transferred or going to be distributed uniformly, and that movement is going to be at the bottom added up with that particular extra movement that is due to the structure effect. So for the second order effect, okay, generally we are going to be write this second order effect like this. So we have the movements and other than the axial forces. So if we talk about the interaction equation and the interaction diagram, for that particular case, when we have a deflected beam column with a sway condition, we have an extra movement M is equal to P delta experienced by this column and making it as a beam column, then what to do with the design criteria? Your combined stresses at any point in a member subjected to bending and direct stresses, axial stresses, as in figure 5.3 is obtained by the formula. So once we are going to be starting from top of the column, so once you are over here, then you may have the axial stresses over here, direct stresses, number 1, you may have the axial stresses and you may have the bending stresses, and these bending stresses may be due to x and y, both of the directions. If the movements are applied or going to be produced in this column in x direction and y direction, so you may have both of the directions. So whatever the case is, you have the bending stresses and you have the axial stresses. So for each point on the column, if analysis is required, then each point will give you the stresses as a combination or superimposed value of the axial stress and plus the bending stress. So axial stress are also generated in that particular any point within the column along the length. The axial stresses are generated and those are going to be added up with the bending stresses. And if you are going to be superimposed the effect of the axial stresses and bending stresses, that is going to give you the final stress within that particular column at that particular point. Okay, this is the very common criteria for the analysis of any structure. So if the design is concerned, then this equation that is going to give you the P over A, the direct stresses, okay, mean the axial stresses, and this part mx y over I, the bending formula, and my x over Iy, that is going to be represent the bending stresses in both of the directions. So for a safe design, the maximum compressive stress F must not exceed the allowable material stress. This is again a very well familiar law, that if you want a design, then by the analysis you can get the amount of the stresses. Axial stress you can calculate independently, you can calculate the bending stress in x direction independently, you can calculate the bending stresses in y direction independently, and you can superimposed in negative and positive in both of the senses. You can superimpose the effect of all of these stresses on one particular point where the analysis has been done. And then if further the result of these analyses are needed to be used for the design purpose, then for the safe design, the maximum compressive stress F must not exceed the allowable material stress F allowable. So you are going to be use this equation in terms of keeping that particular condition, that the result of this equation after superimposing the effect of the stresses, that must be less than or equal to the allowable stresses. Okay, all of the allowable stresses of the material itself, because your material is responsible to absorb or to carry these stresses at this one particular point. So if your material is needed to be designed, then it must resist these stresses in a combination, and the combined effect of all of these stresses must be less than or equal to the allowable stress, mean the material strength. So this is the particular thing. Then we can move ahead for further our interaction equation, interaction diagram, that your P over capital A F allowable plus mx over sx F allowable, mean you are going to be taking on this side of your design equation F allowable on other side in denominator for all of the parameters. So if your allowable stress comes in denominator, then you may have this A into F allowable as, you can replace it as P maximum, because it relates with the allowable stress. So allowable stress will be the maximum stress experienced by the material. That will be the design stress. So it should be A into equal to P maximum. SXF allowable will be equal to MX maximum. That will be SY allowable will be equal to MY M maximum. So P over P maximum, MX over MX maximum, MY over MY maximum. This is going to be superimposed, and finally you are getting whatever the answer for the safe design. The answer of left hand side of this equation must be less than or equal to 1. So this is going to give you an interaction equation, shows the interaction of axial forces and bending moment in an easy way. Okay, so if in only one dimension you are going to be having an interaction equation for two values only, then on one side, let's suppose you are taking 1 as maximum. Then if you are going to be draw the values, going to be passed through all of the values 1. So your safe design value for this, after solving this interaction equation, the answer must come anywhere in between this interaction curve, inside the periphery of this interaction curve. So if any value, that will be
on the boundary, it will be okay, because we have it, the value can be equal to 1. So if on that particular boundary, on this curve, if the value, the line meeting the 1 on x-axis and 1 on y-axis, then it will be okay. Otherwise, if it will be out, if the answer of the left hand side of this equation, interaction equation, is outside the boundary of this interaction curve, then it will not be the safe design for this particular material, for this particular design. So similar can be more understood by these two diagrams, in which I have explained this diagram earlier. For this particular case of the bending moment, for the beam column, we may have the surfaces, okay. So we are going to be having interaction surface. So for the interaction surface, we are going to be having a very simplified one. A typical interaction curve may be two-dimensional, but if you are going to draw it in 3 dimension, mean along this axis, vertical axis, you are going to be drawing the PR over PC. Mean PC is the maximum, P maximum, and this is simple P that is carried by the material. So here you have MRX over MCX, and here you have MRY over MCY. So along these 3 directions, so you can say this is your y-axis, this is x-axis, and here you have z-axis. So if along the 3 directional axis, you are going to be draw this surface. So in 2D, all of the interaction surface, this PR over PC should give you the value less than equal to 1 independently. For the safe design, and MR over MCX should give you the value equal to 1 or less than 1, and your MRCY over MCY should give you the value independently less than or equal to 1. Okay, so your interaction equation is going to give you P over P maximum or PR over PC. The same thing is there. Okay, so your P is equal to PR, P maximum is PC actually. So this value independently, if you are calculating for this particular material, it should be equal to less than or equal to 1. Similarly, your MR, you are not adding it up, independently we are talking about. So your MRX over MCX, this must be less than equal to 1. And similar you can show for MRY in the movement in y direction. So finally, if you are going to be join all of these points in a spherical interaction surface, so in a surface in 3 dimension. So if you are going to be take the interaction of axial force and the bending moment in y direction, then this interaction curve you will get. And if you are going to be take the interaction of the axial forces and the bending moment in y direction, 2 values you are getting, 2 stresses you are going to be superimposed, then you get this interaction surface. And if you want the interaction and superimposing the effect of the bending moment in x direction and bending moment in y direction, 2 stress parameters, then those are going to be give you this interaction surface. And if you are going to be join all of these 3 interaction surfaces to check the effect of the superimposed effect of all of these 3 stress parameters: axial stress, bending stress in x direction, bending stress in y direction. If you want to get the effect of the superimposed effect of all of these 3 stresses, then you are getting this particular surface. This surface will be in 3D, and within that particular surface, if you are getting any point, okay, so this will be one plane over here, and here you have another plane on this side, and here in front you have, and at bottom you have the plane surface. So if you are going to be joining this surface, this is going to give you the 4 planes, one plane in this along this side, one plane along this side, triangular, and here you have at front and at bottom. So 4 planes are going to be give you one surface, this interaction surface. So your boundary will be from 1 to 1, from 1 to 1 going to be joining the 3 axis values. And finally, the interaction equation answer from the left hand side, mean if you are superimposing the 3 stresses combinedly, then the answer should be inside of this interaction surface. Okay, and if you are getting any answer outside of this interaction surface, it will not be a safe design. So your safe design must be lying within the boundary of this surface. Okay, that surface is going to be made or going to be combined with the help of 4 planes. Okay, so in this way you are getting your answer for the interaction diagram.
So continuing with the interaction equation, you have the PR and PC values. Interaction equations, we are replacing our P, the numerator value with PR and denominator value with PC. Numerator value M with MR and denominator value M maximum with MC. So the definition will remain same. PR is the required axial compressive strength. PU in LRFT. So PC is the available axial compressive strength. That values are given over here. And MR is a required flexural strength. MRX will be in X direction. MRY will be in Y direction. MC is the available flexural strength. MCX will be in X direction and MCY will be in Y direction. And in LRFD and in ASD, the values of the factors are given over here. So finally, interaction equations and interaction diagram for AISC interaction equations for beam column particularly. So following interaction equations are applicable for doubly and singly symmetrical members. So if you have PR over PC value greater than equal to 0.2, the AISC interaction equation says that in specifications you will get this condition that your PR over PC, this factor first of all you have to be determined before going towards the interaction equation. If R over PC is greater than equal to 0.2. What does it mean? That your axial load is considerable. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to follow the interaction equations by applying a factor, multiplying factor with the movements part only. Your bending movements are needed to be enhanced or going to be lesser, make lesser by giving the more importance to the axial loads because its value comes out to be greater than equal to 0.2. So equal contribution of the movement and the axial stresses and the bending stresses, you are not going to be incorporating in an interaction equation. If this is the condition when you have PR over PC, the ratio of the PR and PC is greater than 0.2. So if it is more than 0.2, what does it mean? Numerator value is more, mean your required axial stresses are more. If this is the particular case, then the movements needed to be, the importance or significance of the movements, the contribution of the bending stresses should make lesser as compared to the axial stresses. So equal contribution you are not incorporating in the interaction diagram. So here you are incorporating a certain multiplier factor that is going to give you the answer less than 1, and your answers for the bending stresses will be going to be reduced further. So its effect and its contribution factor is needed to be reduced to enhance the contribution effect of the axial forces in the interaction equation, and then you will get your answer that must be equal to or less than 1. Then comes second equation. If your PR over PC is less than 0.2, then what do we have to do? Then of course the axial loads are lesser. Then we have to keep our bending stress contribution as it is, but what we can do, we can reduce the effect of the axial loads. That reduction is in a AISC specification is said that we have to reduce is as half of it. Okay, so whatever the ratio is we are having, so reduce it if it is less than 0.2. So very lesser effect, contribution effect of the axial loads needed to be incorporated in the interaction equation. So it is again going to be multiplied with the factor that is going to reduce the contribution of the axial stresses within the interaction equation as compared to the bending moments. So equal contribution we are not incorporating over here. So you are getting your answer less than equal to 1.